Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. It is Misham Brook Green, the 21st. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of Kindred Spirits by Mark Anthony and Ellen Porath. Now, I would like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga members of this channel, and of course, invite you to consider becoming a member by visiting the link in the description below, reminding you that you always can pick up DragonLance gaming material using my affiliate link. Also, just helps the channel a little bit, and I appreciate it. All right, so this is my perspective only. If yours differs, that's okay. We can all come together and have conversations about Dragonlance, even if we don't agree. And in fact, you could probably do that about everything in life. We just choose not to in most cases. So let's make this different here, all right? So if you disagree, put your comments in the live chat if you're joining live. If you're watching this after the fact, put it in the comments. No one's going to try to shut you down or scream at you because you just disagree with other people. That's called life. All right. The way these work is I'm going to give you my pre-written review, and I write these reviews as I'm reading it. So there may be an evolution of thought and stuff. But then afterward, any comments that appear in chat, I'll just sort of address, and we'll have a good back and forth and have some fun. That's it. This is a great book, so let's talk about it. Chris, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. You're reading this one as an adventure was so different. There's like a heart icon in front of it, so I didn't see what that says. Okay. The first third of this novel takes me back to my youth. Not at the time of reading it in the public library, but even before that. I think many of us, certainly myself, were picked on or bullied as children. I never found out what other boys disliked about me, but I remember their animosity going from not wanting to hang out to overtly mocking me to trying to fight me and throwing rocks at my head, like for real. I can only assume it was in part or wholly because I was an easily excitable kid who they found annoying in some way. I don't blame them all for doing it, as they were just kids too, acting through their own herd behavior. And I don't bring it up for any other reason than context. I understand how Tanis feels in this novel, because I went through the same type of behavior. He was ostracized by those around him, even those who were supposed to be his family. And that also happened to me as well. But more than that, I saw that in my own son decades later, and he was going through the exact same bullying issues in his school when he was a young child. And I couldn't help but feel like it was somehow my fault, like I somehow passed on some sort of gene that made others react negatively to me and my offspring, as it were. And there's nothing that I could do to change the kids' minds about me and my youth. And I was mortified to realize that there's literally nothing I could do to help my son go through the same experiences. I also don't think being picked on or bullied is totally negative. It made me self-reliant, driven to be myself rather than fit in with everyone else. It gave me the perspective not to care what others thought of me. And I believe it did the same to my son. We know it did with Tanis, who always longed for a sense of connection, a connection that he knew wasn't going to come from his supposed family, so he found it in Flint. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself a bit, but I wanted to start this review with my rationale on why I connected to this story and these characters so strongly in the first third of this novel. We actually open with Tanis as a baby. His mother just died, and Solistarin entered the room asking if his late mother, his sister-in-law, named the baby. The nursemaid Eld Aliyah lied and named him Tanthalus, which is supposed to mean ever strong in the human dialect. I thought this was a fitting and wonderful way for Tanis to get his name. We then flash forward to Flint being invited to Qualinost by the speaker of the sun, Solistarin. My only experience with this elf is through the Chronicles, and he was a complete ass. He seemed half crazed and fanatical. This version of him is infinitely different, and he and Flint become genuinely good friends. It's an odd choice, as the speaker never addressed Flint as an old and dear friend in Autumn Twilight, but I actually prefer this way. Solistarin is trying to keep his nation in order, but also trying to open trade with outside people against the wishes of much of the elven population and houses. It really frames later novels where we see the elven senate working against Tanis' son as speaker, and it feels like it's unified with how the elves have always been, deeply rooted in tradition and bigotry. So He invites Flint to do some metalworking commissions and actually owns many of Flint's work already. Flint agrees, and between commissions, he makes wooden toys for the elven children and then passes them out, acting like he's put out and doesn't want to do it the whole time. I love that this is the old Flint that we've always known. It feels so good also to see someone of a different race genuinely care for and love the children simply for being children. I often say that I'm a big fan of humanity, but not much of a fan of humans. Animals and children, however, I hold in high regard. They've always proved they haven't yet been able, like most adults, proved to be worthless sacks of flesh, and they're filled with both magic and wonder, two aspects of life I struggle to keep close to me. And this is the same reason I've always loved the concept of Santa, a nice old man who makes toys for kids because he wants to, and he feels like they deserve some form of happiness. Flint is Santa to me, and I love him for it. Flint also meets Tanis this way and sees firsthand the way Porthos and his longbow trainer, Lord Tiresian, treats him. Flint is a dear friend to Tanis who opens up to the first person who accepts him for who he is, not for what he is not. I love Flint. They build a strong relationship over the years as Flint leaves and returns to Solace in the winter, then returns to Qualinost, and the closeness to Tanis and the speaker grows. We see Tanis getting better at his martial training and education from the Savanesti elf magi Master Miral, who was hired in the court after befriending and joining the speaker's younger brother in Karagoth as they returned to Qualinost. They were supposedly beset by bandits, and the speaker's brother was killed. The speaker hired Miral after reading the letter his younger brother supposedly wrote him. We're also introduced to some cagey people like Lord Zenith, who advises the speaker, and Lord Tiresian is hired later as well. Knowing this will be a murder mystery, I'm already putting pieces in order, and I don't recall who will be the murderer from my childhood when I initially read this. In all, this first third is completely wonderful, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Flint comes across a Tylor, a magical lizard-like creature, on his way to Qualinost, and flees for his life, accidentally discovering one of the many hidden Slamoris in Qualinosti, and ends up magically appearing in the speaker's hall. He goes on a trip to find more Slamoris with Tanis, only to end up drenched in a storm and gets a cold. The speaker visits him to make a medal for his son Porthos' coming-of-age ceremony, and Flint is honored to take the commission. Flint decides to make Tanis a sword and some arrowheads as a gift, and Tanis is approached by Laurana, who gives him a ring, promising that they would be married when they're older. Tanis accepts it, but clearly doesn't feel the same for her. Porthos and Gilthanas both know Laurana loves Tanis, and they both try to get Tanis to act like a brother and elf rather than lead their sister on. Elda Leah visits Flint's forge hoping to find Tanis, but instead spends time with Flint, and they become friends as well, exchanging toys for the children that she watches for clothing that Flint can wear. Then Miral arrives, also looking for Tanis, but he isn't there, so he leaves. Miral and Ilea are both from Karagoth, and Ilea knows something about Miral she isn't sharing with Flint. That night, as Flint is sleeping, someone enters his forge and casts magic over the sword and arrowheads Flint made for Tanis. Gee, I wonder who that could have been. My suspicions are just proven, if it does turn out to be Miral is the traitor. Then there's a great meeting in the speaker's chamber. He announces the prearranged marriage of Laurana to Lord Tiresian, and Laurana refuses, saying that she's already promised to Tanis. Tanis freaks out as he doesn't feel that way for her, and she runs off and as he tries to explain it to the speaker. Lord Tiresian leaves, and as the room clears, that night, Miral approaches Laurana, trying to convince her to marry him. When she demands he leave her father's service before she tells her father about it, he casts a spell on her, where she wakes up in front of her chambers, not remembering the conversation at all. This leads to more evidence that Miral wants to get Tanis out of the way by cursing his weapons. But it could also all be a red herring, so I'm in a wait-and-see mode here. There's a call for a hunting party to finally deal with the Tylor's menace, and among the group are the speaker's sons, Tiresian, Zenith, Tanis, and Flint. The elves jump a ravine to cross it, but Lord Zenith can't, as he's older and he's not handled the horses in a long time. And Flint's mare isn't large enough anyway. So they plan to return with Zenith in order to make sure he safely makes it back to Qualinost when the Tylor attacks Zenith's horse. The elves on the other side of the ravine are afraid to jump back as they would be within striking distance, and the Tylor kills Zenith with a tail strike. Tanis begins shooting arrows at it, and Miro leaps over and casts Lightning Bolt, a spell he shouldn't know how to cast if he is as weak as he claims to be, constantly. The Tylor dies, and as they examine the field, Zenith has Tanis' arrow in his chest. But it isn't damaged from the Tylor, so it hit him after Zenith dies. This gets back to the speaker, where everyone is blaming Tanis, but Miral speaks out in defense, saying that he redirected the Tylor's magic somehow back at him, and explains how he cast the powerful spell, and it must have also reflected Tanis' arrow as well. Without any justification or verification by other magi, the speaker is faced with demands to exile Tanis. This seems to be clearly putting Miral in the place as a traitor, but as the speaker puts Tiresian in Zenith's place. This means the xenophobic elven houses have more influence, and the speaker is clearly upset, talking with Flint about it all. Flint comes to a decision on the design of the pendant for Porthios when the speaker approves and he begins finalizing it. Now I'm struck by how Laurana is telling Tanis to throw away the ring, but in Autumn Twilight freaks out when Tanis tries to give it back. She seems to still love him and believe that he still loves her as if they left on good standing, which they did not. So a lot of frustrating inconsistencies with this novel. Par for the course, I should say, for Dragonlance novels. So the author seems to be doing their best to throw suspicion on Lord Tiresian, but it isn't landing, as the only person that can do the things the murderer is doing is Master Miro. Tiresian approaches Flint to get his sword fixed before Porthios' ritual of manhood, and Flint refuses. Then Tanis and Ilea enter his forge, and it forces a confrontation between Tiresian and Tanis before Flint outright threatens the Lord. He leaves, and we cut to Flint returning to his forge after a visit, and it's booby-trapped. He avoids one dagger, but another strikes him. Now this is the oddest part. They address Tanis and Ilea taking turns helping Flint, but no one asks where the trap came from, who set it, or brought it to the law's attention. The storyline is just completely dropped. It's completely ridiculous, especially when Flint is in a personal relationship with the speaker. You would think someone would care, or Flint would mention it to any other elf anywhere, or the two elves that he did mention it to would then share it with other people, but they literally just like, someone tried to kill me, ho-hum, another day in Qualinost. It's ridiculous. All right. So, Flint heads up and finishes the pendant, and he's delivered a note by a child for Ilea saying that she knows who killed Lord Zenith. Flint rushes over there with Miral. They lose each other in the crowd, and Ilea is killed before Flint arrives. It's now painfully obvious who the killer is. Then, Tanis enters the house after hearing the news and finds Ilea. Flint enters and sees him, and Miral appears, and Tanis is then blamed for her death. Then, they're all ready to banish him from Qualinosti forever when Flint intercedes and demands time to find proof of the real murderer. They reluctantly concede, and Flint convinces Laurana to distract Tanis' guard. Then, Flint breaks Tanis out, and they rush to the forest where Gilthanas is, as they believe the speaker and his children are the true targets of the murderer. Gilthanas is the only one without guards, so he's the most vulnerable. Flint falls into a pit in the forest leading to an old dwarven tunnel, and Tanis finds Gilthanas being attacked. He rushes to help him, and Gilthanas falls over a cliff. Then Tanis is pushed over the cliff. They land on an overhang where Tanis holds Gilthanas for protection as Gilthanas is passed out from the fall. So why wasn't Tanis passed out? I don't know. How did Gilthanas get knocked out? I don't know. Flint then decides to take a nap in the tunnel. Seriously. So the murderer is free to do his murdering, and they both decide to take a nap. Great choices here. They all eventually get back to the top, with Gilthanas rearresting Tanis even after he just saved his life, and then leads them back to Qualinost. Tanis overwhelms him, ties him up, rushing to act like Gilthanas so he can catch the murderer. Flint gets to the top with the help of his mule, then uses the same secret tunnel as he did earlier in the novel. Tanis stops Porthios, tells him everything, then leaps out to tell the speaker. That's when Muriel admits to everything like a good bad guy always does, and turns out that he is in fact the speaker's brother that everyone thought was dead, Erolos. He was contacted by the Grey Gem and corrupted in his youth, and has been plotting his return and ascendancy to the throne to keep it as pure for the to keep it as pure as Sylvanosti is for their elves. That's what he wants to do to Qualinost. So Tanis ends up stopping him, a la Mace Windu and Emperor Palpatine with lightning reflected from a sword. And we cut to Flint and Tanis in the Inn of the Last Home in solace, talking about it all. It was a really rapid end, but it did what all great mysteries should. It gives you a few culprits and presents the clues for you, the reader, to figure out before the characters in the story did. I really enjoyed this, even though the end was really rushed and not everything made sense. I would definitely recommend this to fans of Flint and Tanis, but also elves and Dragonlance in general. It is worth a read as it treats Tanis and Flint as the heroes that they are, and especially puts a spotlight on why Flint is such a great character. All right, so what did you guys have to say? Hey, Michael, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Let's see. The bullying aspect was depicted beautifully in this book. Yeah, I thought so too. You finally got 2 new novels on paperback. Nice. Let's see. You thought the book nailed the character of Flint exactly as you pictured him from Weiss and Hickman, which hasn't always been the case. You're right. I really, really enjoyed this novel for that aspect of it. It really just reinforced why I always loved Flint in the first place. You know, just so good. Let's see. Your biggest flaw with the book is the way Laurana was depicted. You always pictured Tanis and Laurana having a childish infatuation, but in this book, Tanis never looked at her more than a sister. I think it was actually consistent with Laurana. Her perception of her and Tanis' relationship was always wrong. She's always acted as if, because we've never seen a moment where he was into her like that. It's always just been her trying to present a face as if he was. And so since we've never seen that, it would have been odd for him to be into her now, you know, because it's just never been a fact. The only thing that I thought was really weird was that she's like, throw away the ring. I don't ever want to see you again. I hate you, Tanis. And then when Tanis comes back, she's like, I love you, Tanis. Oh, you still have the ring. We love each other. Like, bitch, you're crazy. You are the reason women get a bad rap. You're crazy. 100%. But yeah, I really felt like it was faithful to Laurana because that's the character arc she goes through, you know, the spoiled little brat into the hero. Coin Slot Kitty, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. The conclusion of the Grey Gem is problematic for so many reasons. Well, yes, but there's a module where the Grey Gem is actually in a Asla Mori in Qualinost. It's a 2nd edition AD&D module, and it's all about Kith Cannon having like hid it in like this like ancient tree that magically puts it in another dimension or something. And so the whole premise of the novel is that, or of the module, is that you and your adventure party has to go in, find the Grey Gem, and get it out, or something like that. And you run across like Kith Cannon himself, I think. Like it's a very weird. It's not the module where actual drow are in Krynn, but it's one of that era of modules in 2nd edition. So when I read that, I was like, okay, well, they're just, you know, this was probably released around the same time that module was released, and that's why they included the Grey Gem with it. And it wouldn't be till way later that Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman decided to put the Grey Gem on its own island, you know, in the middle of the ocean. So, you know, the more you look at timeline of Dragonlance, the more you realize that the biggest problematic areas are when Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman come back to it. And then they mess it all up. Because, yes, there are inconsistencies with the original trilogy, specifically with this book, but everything else that Dragonlance was doing with the modules and the other books, they're all consistent with each other. They're just not consistent with Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman's versions. So it really comes down to how you as a reader or you as a Dragonlance fan want to interpret, well, is Dragonlance just Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman? Or is Dragonlance all of the contributors that have always contributed to it? Because most of the modules were not written by Tracy Hickman. Most of the modules were written by other people, Douglas Niles being one of the biggest contributors. And I don't know anyone who's like, Douglas Niles is the Dragonlance man. It's always like, oh, well, it's Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. No, that's just fundamentally not true. We choose to believe that because we want to. Because most of us came in through Chronicles and Legends. Okay, so what else here? It shows that she matures when Tanis rejects her. Yeah, for sure. She definitely goes through that process. What's your favorite novel coin? Let's see, that's tough. Legends 2 is a great one. Strange that Solistairn doesn't remember Flint more in Dragons of Autumn and Twilight, as they had a friendship. Yeah, that's the part that bothers me the most, is that you stress so hard how close they are in this, knowing full well that they're not in the book that came before this. So these two authors knew that they were going like strongly against canon, and they just said, F it, who cares? Like, really, like just a little consistency. And at the time that this was written, there weren't a ton of novels to reference in order to understand what's canon or, you know, what's happened before. You just have to read literally the first one. That's it. And then you know that everything that you're writing in this novel is BS because it's contradicted by the first ever novel written for Dragonlance. So you can't help but blame these two authors for that. Let's see. A nice story beat was Alea naming Tantalus and telling how his mom survived long enough to nurse him once. Yeah, Padme didn't even do that. Yeah, I don't know if it's good or not. And it also, there's so many conflicting, like this came out, the meeting Sextet was actually released after Preludes. So we get Tanis's, the result of rape from the original trilogy, Chronicles. And then we get a version of that in Preludes. And then this version is totally different as well. Because in this, it's the brother of Solistairn, Miral, who's actually Erelaz, who is the one that sent the bandits to kill. Actually, Tanis's mother was also supposed to be murdered, but they only killed the father, the rapist father. I'm sorry. He sent the bandits in to kill the actual brother of Solistairn, which was Tanis's actual would-be father. And they're the bandits that raped the girl, and that's the result of Tanis. So it was all in Solistairn's family, like that caused the whole Tanis problem in the first place, which is, there's a little poetic justice to the fact that Solistairn then decides to take care of Tanis when it was his brother who is the result of him being born and his other brother being murdered. So I thought that was really interesting, kind of fucked up. Messed up. Let's see. You were hoping to see more of a friendship between Tanis and Gilthanas as kids. They watched it deteriorate. Yeah, I never got a sense from anything that they were ever really friends. Like Tanis mentions that when they were really young, they were just brothers, you know, fooling around. But growing up with a brother, that's about the relationship you expect, especially when there's age differences. Like me and my friends would always pick on my younger brother ad nauseum. You know, I mean, it was just like what you do as brothers. I mean, we, of course, did it out of love and family, and they did it because they hated his half-human ass. But other than that, pretty much the same. Let's see. That's how you felt about Sturm's backstory. Let's see. As much as you still love these books, the saga would be so much better with a canon coordinator like Lucas did the years overseeing, for the EU, for Star Wars. Yeah, they would have been infinitely better. And they wouldn't have had to change that much. A little adjustments here and there, but that's what the editors were supposed to have done. And they clearly didn't care at all. Dragonlance is the best. Hey, Nuka Bat, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Nunya Business. How you doing, man? Good to see you. Let's see. Dragonlance is the best realm in all of D&D. Last book you read was Night of the Black Rose, which you know is Ravenloft, but still. Yeah, it's pretty good. I thought Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman kind of did Lord Soth dirty, personally, in the end. But I liked his Ravenloft stay, personally. Raceland popping in. ERs that the master of the past, present, and future. What? Let's see. To keep it positive, the scenes about Flint teaching Tanis by the forge and telling him inappropriate brawling stories were gold. I really, really enjoyed Flint. I can't even stress it enough. This particular novel makes him the best hero in the entire Chronicles, in my opinion. And it makes Tanis' reaction to his death all the more understandable and believable. They had such a wonderful relationship as what started arguably probably as mentor and apprentice was built into really close friends and bordered a father-son relationship. And it, just sort of revisiting these preludes and meetings novels and then reflecting back at the end of Chronicles, I get why Tanis lost his damn mind. And it just justifies it even more for me. I mean, it makes it even more believable. I love it. The elves are a bit harsh with Tanis at times. A bit? A bit? The elves are jackasses. Total jackasses. All right. You're right, Nukabat. 100%. I thought so too. Thanks, man. Thanks, Nunya. Good to see you, man. All right, everyone. That is going to do it for this review of Kindred Spirits. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you revisit it sometime because it's one of the better ones that I've read between the Preludes and the Meeting Sextet. Next is Wanderlust, but I'm going to be on vacation next week, so I won't have much of anything for you guys for probably 2 weeks. I do have a setting episode that's coming out because I record those a week in advance, but the week after that, there won't be one. So just expect a bit of a delay. But the gaming sessions are still going to be going off, and hopefully they'll be fun. So, tune in for that. All right. That's it for my review of Kindred Spirits by Mark Anthony and Ellen Porath. What did you all think of the murder mystery-based story? Did you enjoy a younger, more innocent Qualinost? And finally, why were these events never mentioned in Dragons of Autumn Twilight? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. That all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. So, this channel is all about celebrating the world, the wonderful world of Dragonlance Saga. I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. My name is Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slanjavar.